It's fair to say it's fairly contentious what we do. My company looks at scripts, and through a combination of expert process and neural networks, it helps Hollywood studios and others in the film industry and in the TV industry decide what value they have on the paper and decide whether it's a worthwhile investment or not. So we don't write films, we don't write television programs, we work with the creatives and we give them data and information which is helpful, we hope, in their daily life. And if you're the head of a major studio and some chap comes in, some well-known producer whose last movie made $250 million at the US box office, and he comes in shouting the odds, which is a big surprise, saying, look, you can make my next film. I have selected you, Mr. Disney, Mr. Sony, Mr. Warner. You can make my next movie, but you must spend $150 million on the making of it, the same on the promoting of it. You must have star X, Y, and Z appearing in it. Now what do you say? It's kind of a curious position to be in, because those are the guys who you think you have the power in Hollywood because they have the 20-odd distribution slots per studio per year. But oftentimes they're kind of bullied by the people who own the intellectual property, the writing on the paper. And that kind of brings us to a circle where we are today now, because this morning, those of you who were in the earlier sessions before lunch, I don't know if any of you were, but you'll have seen some very good presentations about special effects. And you know that special effects these days are absolutely marvelous. But special effects do not make a movie. And I have the fullest respect for the bright minds that we heard talking today and that you see every time you go to the cinema, who've made these fantastic things like Gravity, Total Recall. I mean, look fantastic on the screen. Now, my company worked on one of those films. Not necessarily one of the ones I mentioned, but the films that were being mentioned this morning. We've worked on several of these big, fat, tentpole blockbusters, which are chock full of special effects. But the truth is, as most of you, I think, will be able to attest, is that it doesn't matter how special the special effects. If what was written on the page in the first place, if what becomes the core story is not engaging, you can have all the rockets, all the planets, all the Sandra Bullocks in the world, and a film might start with a humongous sense of occasion and a big box office, but by the next week, it's down by 66%. And the following week, it's barely struggling to fill the cinemas. So if all the films in the world were all great, then the people making them wouldn't need a little bit of advice. But the truth is, as you will hear from our second speaker in this session, we all believe that it starts with a script. That's the thing. You can have the bells and whistles come post facto. Now today, because really of practical reasons to do with flying to Heathrow Airport in time, we're doing this session a little bit back to front. We've got someone who's going to be talking about the scripts in about half an hour's time. That's Franklin Leonard, the founder of The Blacklist, and I'll introduce him more fully when it's his time. But before that, we're talking with somebody who many of you will find, if you like, from the more practical side of filmmaking. And I don't want to prejudge. I don't know any of you. I'm not quite sure what's brought you here. But from last year, I'd say a lot of people that were interested in the digital biscuit, feel film. It's a heartfelt thing. And perhaps when you're earlier in your career or midway through, it's about the content. I've got a script in me. I can see this TV series. I can see me making this film. And that's only half the battle. Ultimately, you have to get somebody with deep pockets or a large checkbook to help you make your creative vision real. The nuts and bolts, the bricks and mortar of actually getting something that started life in your head, went through your fingertips, onto a screen of some description somewhere. So the first person that we've got speaking today is Debbie Vandermeulen, who is the CEO and founder of Fusion. Fusion what, Debbie? Fusion Features. There you go. Thank you very much.
It's not Greek.
Yeah. I haven't put my specs on. This is so embarrassing. I will put them on. How about that? I know Debbie quite well. This is the trouble. And I've never heard her refer to herself as being the CEO of Fusion Features. That's a fact. I know Debbie rather differently. 2 years ago, are any of you familiar with the English town of Luton? Yeah. It's not the most Hollywood of places, is it? Okay. I was at a football match in Luton, watching my team, Grimsby Town, beat the backside off of Luton Town with all my mates from school, totally un-Hollywood thing, and I got an email pinging on my BlackBerry, and I looked at it, and it was forwarded from our info address, and it said, "Hi, Epigogics, my name's Debbie Vandermeulen. I've been reading about you online, and I think what you do could be of great interest to me and my Hollywood clients, and I'm in Paris on Monday, would love to meet you. We're based in London. So my response was, my first thought, and I've told her this, my first thought was, bloody Americans, they don't teach anything at their schools, do they? Like geography. But I did meet her in London on the Tuesday, not the Monday, and I found, and I've continued to find, this woman knows everybody in Hollywood, and she is more or less involved in, just to paraphrase, in the world of medium to small size independent film financing. And for a lot of you in this room, I imagine it's something that you're either involved in or you're going to have to get involved in at some point, to further your creative impetus. And Debbie, in her presentation, will talk about some of the stuff she's worked on, but she's worked with all kinds of people, high, low, in-betweeny, and she knows what it takes to actually cross that final bridge. She is in perpetual motion. She's in London every month. Well, that doesn't prove it's perpetual motion. But she's based in Los Angeles. She knows lots of people in this room. I'm not quite sure how. She knows how to create an image of success, which then becomes success in and of itself. So without further ado, I would like the Fusion Features founder and CEO, which is news to me, Debbie, to come on stage. Sorry about that.
Thank you so much. I'm really thrilled to be here, and Fernanda and Birch and Leah and Megan have made me feel so welcome, and I've met so many of you at the different events and the different seminars. And I think one of the things that I just want to start off with is I raise money, but every one of you could raise money, and chances are perhaps don't realize your full potential in being able to recognize that the person sitting next to you might be that person that could invest in your film. So that's what I want to just kind of start you off with, because that's what I kind of look to when I'm flying on an airplane or sitting in a movie theater or walking through any kind of environment where you just don't know what's the possibility. Winston Churchill said, "I'm always ready to learn, but I don't like being taught." This is not that. This is an opportunity to share, and I welcome your questions and thoughts, and I'm constantly learning and figuring it out, and I'm just going to share with you a little bit of knowledge that's been imparted to me along the way. So we'll start off with what you're going to hear today is where the money is. So many of you probably are looking at some point, at some time, for money for your projects. And when you're talking with people, you want to understand how do you get that person to open up their pocketbook. So I'm going to share with you how you're going to get it. And then when you're getting money from someone, I'm a good steward of other people's money. So I want to minimize their risk and maximize their return. So many of you have a script. Many of you know someone who has a great script. There's a difference between good and great. And I'll kind of share with you what are some of the elements that will identify what a great script is. You want to start off with a preliminary budget. A preliminary budget just kind of gives someone an idea as to how much money you're looking for. You're also going to have an idea of what actors, what director, perhaps an executive producer that has some street cred, who's going to give a little bit of value to your project. And then investment circular, I think in the UK and in Ireland, it's called an information memorandum. So I'm going to kind of talk you through some of those things. So a film fund package is an investment circular, an information memorandum. I think pretty much all of these things are self-explanatory. When you're talking about the filmmaking landscape, I really do think that you have to say film is a risky business. You just have to start off with the fact that it's just one of those things. If you don't use a certain formula or model to maximize the return on investment, then people perhaps won't get their money back. And then I think the grosses of similar films, I've seen this be something where it's Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind as compared to Memento. Totally, totally different landscapes of films. I just made a movie called Guys Reading Poems. It's the first film that's shot on the Epic monochrome, which is the red camera, but it's only for black and white film. Do any of you know what I'm talking about, the black and white camera? You do? Good. 1, 2, 3, 4. Wow. Oh, wow. You guys, cool. Black and white is unbelievable. It looks 1920s Hollywood glamour. It's less expensive, and ultimately the return on investment for an investor is so much higher. So I would absolutely recommend any of you to look into that. When I say market outlook, what I'm really kind of talking about is what the distribution outlook is for your potential project to return money on investment. And then investment and return on investment is really much more about how much money you're asking from that person. Is that the right amount to be asking from that person? And then what is the kind of package you put together to return that money? When I think of film development, I think that people just kind of gloss over, well, the script is ready to go because I've got a first, a second, a third draft. Many scripts are 17 drafts minimum. And what you find is that even though you feel it's ready to go, sometimes a script editor or a script doctor, or for that matter, an executive producer who's got some street cred in the industry as a writer or director could give you some advice. So I think film development is one of the most important areas. The challenge you have with film development is it's development dollars, and that's the hardest to get. So where I think you can find the money, and I use the euro sign in this slide so that way it'll differentiate between some of the UK schemes I'm going to talk about, but I think all of these are pretty self-explanatory. Venture capitalists are really people that are part of funds, but they're individuals that actually just want, and it's kind of looked at as a black box. They don't really care what the script is. They don't really care what is on the page, but they're much more interested in the fact that they can return money on investment because you've got a distribution partner. And then I think tax credits. Here you've got Tax 481. I know there's Northern Ireland with regards to shooting in the UK. That's a real benefit with the UK tax credit. You can partner those. And then GAP or bridge funding. GAP is basically a bridge loan or a loan from a bank. Government investment incentives such as SEIS and EIS. Show of hands, who knows what SEIS or EIS is? Really? Oh my God, you guys are in for a treat. SEIS is Seed Enterprise Investment Scheme from the UK. It's development money. Kumbaya. This is where the money is to pay for the script, to pay for the book, to pay for the script editor, to get key art done, to do an adaptation. So Seed Enterprise Investment Scheme is £150,000, so 225,000 euro, that is available from the UK scheme, Seed Enterprise Investment Scheme. Now, you're only 2 hours from Belfast and the other counties in Northern Ireland. There's all kinds of, kind of I's dotted and T's crossed when it comes to this, but I advise every one of you to kind of look into that because ultimately the scheme supports smaller startup companies. And believe it or not, feature films put 250 people to work minimum in most films, so therefore they're seen as a startup company. Why SEIS? It's an economic advantage to the UK government to have the economy stimulated by monies coming in from people who are wealthy. And this is a tax relief. They get 50% tax relief off of their 225,000 euros. That's crazy. Nobody gets 50% tax relief. If you sell a business, add on another 22% risk. And then as you'll see on this slide, there's a profit percentage return even if the film doesn't make money. So when you have your seed development funding, I've kind of outlined some of the things you can use it for, But really, it's an incredible gift for a lot of filmmakers, and there's a lot of people who are accessing seed enterprise investment scheme monies. When you're going out to get production finance and you are getting your team together, there's really no, secret to your team. The one thing I will tell you, though, and I'm finding this more and more, is an executive producer that has some street cred in the beginning of your investment circular or your information memorandum really does start the conversation going when it comes to cast. Because if you've got a name that people recognize or people respect or they've got some street cred, it actually gives an investor a bit of a comfort level. So EIS, Enterprise Investment Scheme, is 30% tax relief for a UK domicile resident, up to £5 million, 7.5 million euros. I don't know about you, but I can make a film for 7.5 million euros. You probably could make a film for 1 million euros. So this is a huge avenue to explore, and Enterprise Investment Scheme is something that is, as of April 6th, getting renewed, and there will be a CITR, which basically covers transmedia and games and technology. So I would highly recommend that you look into Enterprise Investment Scheme, Seed Enterprise Investment Scheme, and then CITR. When you're minimizing the risk for an investor, you really want to know that you've got a good script. Whenever I get a script, and I read a script a night, so I know the material that's out there, I can tell you what's a good script in a very short amount of time. I ran a screenwriting competition for a lot of years. I helped a lot of films get made by just putting people together. And that's really what I do. I kind of connect the dots. And I think when you've got attention from cast that they're willing to kind of add their name, that's a real vote of confidence that you've got a good script. When you're maximizing the return, there are a lot of ways to kind of say to your investor, I've got your back. Again, being a good steward of other people's money. And I think that when I talk about the Harry Potter model, I'm thinking of David Yates when he did Order of the Phoenix. He had done one feature film, but he'd won so many other BAFTA awards for directing and short film and television and commercials. And Warner Brothers took a chance, but ultimately they surrounded him with a cinematographer and an editor and a team of people that gave Warner Brothers the confidence that he was going to knock it out of the park. And then I think he did 3 more. So pretty impressive stuff with David Yates. Risk mitigation is when you're actually going out and talking to a distributor before you shoot. So you're getting money because you're getting a territory committed to showing your film. It doesn't have to be the US. It can be France. It can be any territory. But that minimizes the risk of an investor thinking that they're actually going to be giving you money and the film is not going to be going anywhere. So these are some of the ways that you mitigate the risk. And I think that if any of these are kind of unknowns, the one thing I would kind of point out is a position on the waterfall. If I'm doing something pari passu with all of my investors, when it's enterprise investment scheme or seed enterprise investment scheme, it is not something that needs to be pari passu because they've already gotten a tax relief. So that's really attractive to equity individuals who are actually going to perhaps get a territory as part of their investment to minimize their risk. I think what I've just kind of gone over is really a thumbnail sketch. I'm completely happy to keep in touch and to answer questions. I teach people how to raise money all the time, so I'm part of yourhollywoodpro.com. And by the way, there's a lot of people that are resources for you at yourhollywoodpro.com, and then that's my email address. So that's me.